We have team coverage of Hurricane Ian. We'll take you to Florida in a moment, but we start with Elise Finch. Elise.
Good morning to you, Mary and Alice. So we continue to watch Hurricane Ian right now churning over western Cuba. It made landfall on this tiny island nation at about 4:30 this morning. So we continue to watch it move over western Cuba. It's expected to be over this country for a couple more hours. It will then move into the Gulf of Mexico and then take aim at Florida. Already, Florida is being impacted by the outer bands of this system. And the stats right now show that Ian has 125 mile an hour. Those are the maximum sustained winds. So it remains a Category 3, a major hurricane, which is what it was when it made landfall in Cuba. So we're watching the system move north at about 12 miles an hour. Turn a little bit to the northeast and impact the west coast of Florida here over the next day or so. What we're watching now are just a plethora of watches and warnings that now dot pretty much most of the Florida coastal areas. We're talking hurricane watches and warnings, tropical storm watches and warnings, and storm surge watches and warnings. So we have all of those at play right now since Florida is already being impacted by those outer bands. On this track, as you can see, there is that tiny turn to the northeast here. But once we see Ian emerge over the Gulf, we expect it to strengthen to a Category 4 storm, then weaken a bit to Category 3 before making landfall in Florida. So we're talking Florida's impact, wind gusts in excess of 100 miles an hour, rainfall 8 to 14 inches or more, and of course storm surge 5 to 10 feet. So we are talking about life-threatening conditions here. This is a closer look at this track as it is expected to impact Florida. Back here at home, very calm for us. We've got partly cloudy skies right now, 61 degrees with a light wind out of the west. So things are fairly quiet for us, a little cooler inland. Still some locations in the 40s, like Franklin at 44, Matawan at 47, so a little slower to warm up. We will see temps right where they should be, so seasonal sunshine expected for us today. 72 degrees and breezy with just the slightest chance that some could see a shower today. Cooler temps tomorrow at 68 degrees and Thursday 66, so it really will feel a little bit more like autumn. And we've got a 7-day that, again, fairly quiet for us over the next few days. The biggest thing, of course, is that the cooler temperatures, and we continue to keep an eye on Ian. With that, I'll send it back to you.
And Elise, you had a graphic showing us those watches and warnings, and you mentioned storm surge alerts. Can you tell us a little bit more about what those are?
Yeah, so storm surge is really, it is that rise of water that is above and beyond what we see with an astronomical tide, and it inundates an area. So it is just the storm surge alert is meant to call attention to this danger of life-threatening inundation from the rising water. And of course, the water is rising from the cyclonic action of this landfalling, in this case, hurricane. It is that wind pushing the water toward the shoreline. And so that is why we see these alerts. Right now in Florida, we have a storm surge watch that you see here in gray and a warning that you see here in hot pink. So, of course, most of these are for the Gulf Coast of Florida. So that is what we're looking at right now.
And Elise, we understand the storm surge alert system, that's only about 5 years old. So what's the backstory with that?
Yeah, so basically what happened is we had watches and warnings and other ways to visually alert people to things like wind and, of course, the tropical storm watches and warnings. So this was developed to help identify and visualize the areas most at risk. So people could take a look at a map and see with their eyes, okay, this is the area at risk of storm surge via a watch or a warning. And, this is for tropical cyclones that affect the Gulf and the Atlantic coast. So those are the only areas that will see these watches and warnings. And the reason why it's so important is because nearly half of all deaths associated with landfalling cyclones are from storm surge flooding. So it really was imperative to figure out a way to have people take a look at a map and understand where they are and see how significant the threat of storm surge flooding is. So that's the backstory on that. And with that, Mary, Alice, I'll send it back to you.
Really interesting. Elise, thank you.